We all know the story of Snow White, right? The beautiful princess, the seven dwarfs, the poison apple, and the charming prince who saves the day. It's a classic, a fairy tale that has captivated us for generations. But what if I told you that the story you know, the one with the cheerful songs and the happily ever after, is just a polished, sanitized version of a much darker, more tragic reality? The real Snow White wasn't a fairy tale character. She was a real person, a German princess whose life was filled with political intrigue, jealousy, and a mysterious death that still echoes through history. Today, we are going to pull back the curtain on the Disney magic and uncover the heartbreaking true story that inspired the legend of Snow White. Get ready, because this is a tale far more chilling than any Wicked Queen spell. Her name was Margaretha von Waldeck, and she was born in 1533 in the German county of Waldeck. She wasn't just any girl. She was the daughter of Count Philip IV, a powerful and influential figure. From the outside, her life seemed privileged. She lived in a castle, part of the nobility, but beneath the surface of courtly life, danger was brewing. Margaretha's world was one of shifting alliances and political power plays. Her father, Count Philip, owned several copper mines, and the workers in these mines were often children. Due to the grueling labor and malnutrition, these children were often stunted in growth and prematurely aged, with bent limbs. Sound familiar? Many historians believe these poor, unfortunate children were the real-life inspiration for the seven dwarfs. They weren't cheerful miners singing their way to work. They were victims of harsh child labor. Margaretha herself was known for her striking beauty, with fair skin and blonde hair that made her stand out. But in a royal court, beauty can be a curse as much as a blessing. Her mother died when she was young, and her father remarried a woman named Katharina of Hatzfeld. This is where the story starts to sound a bit more like the fairy tale we know. Katharina, Margaretha's stepmother, was reportedly very strict and favored her own children. While we don't have records of a magic mirror, it is not hard to imagine the jealousy and tension that could arise between a beautiful stepdaughter and a new wife trying to secure her own position and her children's future. The seeds of the wicked stepmother trope were planted right here, in the real-life dynamics of a 16th century noble family. At just 16 years old, Margaretha's life took a dramatic turn. To secure political advantages, her father sent her away from home to the court of Brussels in what is now Belgium. She was to live under the care of Maria of Austria, the sister of the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. This was a huge step up for a young noblewoman, placing her at the very heart of European power. In Brussels, Margaretha's beauty once again became the talk of the court. She attracted many suitors, powerful and wealthy men who were captivated by her. One of these suitors was a very prominent figure, Prince Philip II of Spain, the future king. A romance allegedly blossomed between the young Margaretha and Prince Philip. Letters and court whispers from the time suggest a genuine affection between them. However, this was a politically impossible match. Philip was already entangled in other marital alliances that were crucial for Spain's power. A marriage to a minor German countess, no matter how beautiful, was simply out of the question. It was politically undesirable. Her own father, Count Philip, supported the Protestant Reformation, while the Spanish court was fiercely Catholic. Their union would have been a political disaster. This forbidden love adds another layer of tragedy to Margaretha's story. She found a potential prince, a real-life fairy tale romance, but the harsh realities of politics stood in their way, preventing any chance of a happy ending. And this is where Margaretha's story takes its darkest turn. Just a few years after arriving in Brussels, at the young age of 21, Margaretha von Waldeck died suddenly and mysteriously. The official cause of her death was never clearly recorded, but the circumstances were incredibly suspicious. She had been in good health, a vibrant young woman at the peak of her life. Then, suddenly, she was gone. The most persistent rumor, one that has been passed down through historical documents and local law, is that she was poisoned. Contemporary chronicles from the town of Waldeck explicitly state that she was poisoned. The question is, by whom? There are several theories. One popular theory points the finger directly at Spanish agents. With her politically inconvenient romance with Prince Philip II, perhaps the Spanish court saw her as a liability that needed to be eliminated to clear the path for a more suitable royal marriage for their prince. Getting rid of a German countess would have been a cold but effective political move. Another theory, the one that resonates most strongly with the fairy tale, is that her own family had a hand in it. Some historians suggest that her stepmother, Katerina, could have been involved, perhaps driven by jealousy or ambition. Or even her own father, seeing her as a political pawn that had become more trouble than she was worth. We may never know the absolute truth, but what is clear is that her death was not natural. It was a premature and tragic end for a young woman caught in a web of power, love, and deceit. So how did this tragic tale of a 16th century German princess become the beloved fairy tale of Snow White? The story of Margaretha von Waldeck was passed down through generations as local folklore. It was a cautionary tale, a dark piece of local history. 2 centuries later, in the early 1800s, 2 German brothers began collecting these folk tales. You might have heard of them, Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm, the Brothers Grimm. They traveled across the German countryside, listening to stories that had been told for hundreds of years. When they heard the story of the beautiful countess who was poisoned, who lived in a land with small, stooped miners, and who had a jealous stepmother, they saw the makings of a powerful story. The Brothers Grimm took the raw, historical elements of Margaretha's life and mythologized them. The political poisoning became a symbolic, magical poison apple. The child miners became the 7 dwarfs, each with a distinct personality. The jealous stepmother became the iconic Wicked Queen with her magic mirror. The Grimm brothers' version, published in 1812, was still much darker than what we know today. In their first edition, the Queen is forced to dance to her death in red-hot iron shoes at Snow White's wedding. It was a story filled with vengeance and brutality, reflecting the harsh realities of the time. It wasn't until Walt Disney got his hands on the story in the 1930s that Snow White was transformed into the sweet, gentle princess we recognize. Disney softened the edges, removed the gruesome details, and added catchy songs and adorable animals. He turned a dark cautionary tale into the world's first feature-length animated film, a commercial and critical success that defined family entertainment for decades to come. Disney gave us the happily ever after that the real Snow White, Margaretha von Waldeck, was so tragically denied. So the next time you watch Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, remember the real story behind the magic. Remember Margaretha von Waldeck, the beautiful princess whose life was cut short by jealousy and political ambition. Remember the child laborers in the copper mines, the real-life dwarfs whose suffering was far from a fairy tale. The story of Snow White is not just about a magic mirror or a kiss from a prince. It is a powerful reminder that behind many of our most beloved myths and legends lies a kernel of truth, often darker and more complex than we could ever imagine. The legend lives on, but the true story of the girl who inspired it remains a haunting and tragic piece of history. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the dark origins of Snow White. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more hidden histories behind the stories you thought you knew. Let me know in the comments which fairy tale you'd like me to investigate next.